own businesses to do exactly that. Now, you should have received handouts to go along with this training. If not, you can get them at styledbykait.com/handouts. And I'm going to ask you to not only follow along, but to do a few exercises with me as we go through this training, because I want you to build out your personal brand in real time as we do this. So essentially, what I'm going to give you today is the difference between something that we've all been taught. Everyone hears that you need to market yourself and you need to sell yourself. But what you really need to do is brand yourself authentically if you want to make a profit without a constant, just basically hard sales conversation with everyone you meet. And what I'm about to give you is different than any other marketer or business coach has probably taught you. I know that because I have personally worked with dozens of marketing firms, business coaches, mentors, and they all say that you need a personal brand. They don't teach you how to do it. So I'm going to teach you how to do it. Let's go. So this is a little bit about myself. I actually launched my first business at age 22. I launched a clothing line, and it was sold across the U.S. in over 45 different boutiques, and I did reasonably well. But I launched that in 2007, so right when everything started to just go crazy in the economy, and owning a clothing business was a pretty rough place to be at that time. So I left that, started doing what I do for other companies, everyone from some big name Fortune 500 companies, the U.S. Olympic ski teams, and even international corporations. Today I have 3 successful businesses, and I've been featured in a variety of publications all over the U.S. And I've mentored and coached over 100 small brands and entrepreneurs with my method, doing exactly what I do. So I call my personal branding system Boom Your Brand, and it is how to market yourself without selling. These are the tools and tactics no one else is going to teach you, but you need to know in order to profit doing what you love. So I'm going to teach you today what our method is and why it works, but I just want you guys to keep in mind it would be impossible to give you everything I know about how to do it in just 90 minutes. I teach this in over 100 hours of coursework. So I'm going to tell you about, exactly what you need to do. I'm going to show you some examples of people that have done it with incredible results. And then at the end of this training, if you're intrigued and you want to work with me further, I will show you how you can do that as well. I want you to just keep one thing in mind as you take in all of the information I'm about to give you today. You may think you know something because you've seen a presentation or a YouTube video, or you've read a book about it, or someone told you that you were supposed to do these things in a certain way. I'm sure that we are all very motivated and intelligent people. I know this because you would not be here watching this training if you did not have a thirst for knowledge and growth, but I want you to keep this in mind. Knowledge on its own is relatively useless. It is what you do with what you learn that will affect your future and your success. Action is power, not perfection or knowledge or intention. In my business, I teach my employees, I teach my students, I teach all of the people that I work with how to take massive, imperfect action every day. Keep moving forward and learning in order to keep taking action and growing. So as you watch this training, I also want to ask you, what will you do with what you learned today? If you don't take an action, there will be no change in your life and your business. So I'm going to teach you 3 things in this class today. First is how to find your brand voice. And what most of us are doing is trying to make it look good and essentially just acting our way to success, which has varying levels of effectiveness, but what ends up happening is that you are actually spending all of your energy in the act and not in actually driving your business to the success that you want. Second, I'm going to teach you how to tell your story. We all know that we need a personal brand and we're supposed to tell our story, but do you know the level at which you get the best reaction from your audience and you also don't wear yourself out with the emotion of it? You really need to showcase your personal value and your uniqueness in a way that nobody else can do, but that is something you can replicate over and over and over again to get your audience to experience you without giving away so much of yourself that it becomes really draining. And then finally, you need to relate what you sell to that personal story. Your audience really wants the experience of who you are. This is why people buy. So it isn't about what you sell or what your qualifications are. It's about who you are. This is why people take action. Let's get into the details. Over 85% of businesses are not connecting with their customers. They're all making the same mistake. They're talking about two things. One, their products, or two, their qualifications. Remember what I just said about why people buy? They want an experience. They are not going to buy because you tell them how great you or your products and services are. So what is personal branding and how can it change this conversation? Simply put, personal branding is the process of establishing and telling the story of who you are and what you who you are and what you stand for. This sounds a lot simpler than it is. There is a process and a science to doing it effectively so that both you and your audience engage with your story and you actually build your own confidence. That's very scientific and psychological, actually. So how many of you have heard that your customer or audience has decided within the first 5 seconds whether or not they're going to engage with you? This is scientifically proven to be true. People decide whether or not they're going to buy from you immediately. And if they decide that they aren't really liking what they see, there's almost nothing you can do to get them to change their mind. What you may not know, though, is that if they do decide to engage with you, you can still change their mind into not buying from you if you are not consistent and trustworthy across all 5 levels of personal branding. Sadly, there is less than a 15% chance that you'll change their mind to yes if they've decided no. So what you probably want to understand from this is that you had better be sure you're giving yourself every tool available to you to engage a client if you want them to work with you. Your brand, essentially, is your story. Your story is your brand. The more consistent you are across every point of interaction with your customers, from online to offline, in person, your branding materials, every place that they see you, the more that they trust you. The more that they trust you, the more that they're interested in what you have to say, the more likely they are to buy. So there are 5 levels of personal branding. The first is what people see. So your wardrobe, your personal style, and then followed very, very closely by how you interact with them. So your speech patterns and demeanor. You can change and affect this first one very, very easily, but it needs to be authentic to you. Speech patterns and demeanor you maybe have a little bit of control over, but really what you need to do is understand who you are and how you interact with people and work within that. Third is personal confidence. If you are acting, which most people are, if you are trying to pretend that you're confident when you're not, your audience absolutely sees this. And as I already mentioned, you spend far too much of your time trying to convince them that you're confident rather than just moving on with a conversation that's going to make you money. Next is physical and emotional rapport. There are actually 11 levels of rapport that you can use to make sure that whoever you're talking to has a good experience with you. We teach those in our classes. I'm not going to go deeply into them today because it's very complicated stuff, but just know there's a lot of opportunity for you to connect with your audience, and you can do so very intentionally, so you know exactly how you're coming across to them and what their reaction to you is going to be. Finally, again, we always talk about what we're selling last. So your branding materials, your website, your logo, your business cards, your resume if you have one. This is all supporting everything in these first 4 levels. Now, sales training and marketing are not going to teach you these 5 levels. The best training accounts for only 1, maybe 2 levels of personal branding. So this is actually information that you're not going to find in most other coaches or training programs. Let's talk about marketing versus branding for a second. You might be selling a product or service, or you might truly be selling yourself. Either way, you can't just throw it out there and hope that your audience gets it. They need to connect with you and who you are in order to buy. It's actually the number one rule in marketing in 2019, and the number one reason that smaller brands are the ones, by and large, who are getting it right. And big brands are closing their doors every other second because they're spending more and more and more money on marketing and trying to push their products. And consumers are looking for experiences, not products. So what is the difference between marketing and personal branding? Marketing is essentially selling. You are trying to manipulate a consumer into buying something. Branding is storytelling. So you're giving them the opportunity to connect with you, to have an experience with you. And if you do it right and you're talking to the right audience, they want to buy from you in order to continue that experience. Also, as I already touched on, there's a pretty linear relationship between what you spend on marketing and what you will make, or how much you'll grow your profits. If you use personal branding and storytelling appropriately, you can take a very small amount of ad or marketing spend and turn that into a lot of profit, which makes it great for a smaller business or a service-based business especially. So the number one rule, of course, don't talk about yourself. If you're telling them about what you sell or about your qualifications, you are leaving big money on the table. Sales conversations almost always focus on you trying to convince your client that you're worth them parting with their hard-earned money. Guess what? They're never going to feel like anything is worth their hard-earned money. Storytelling or personal branding conversations focus on giving them an experience, which is scientifically proven to be what people buy. We all have enough things, but if you can make their lives better, especially through some form of shared experience, they will buy from you and they will spend more money than if you are trying to convince them the value of your product, and they will keep coming back. This is one of my favorite quotes from Richard Branson, who is arguably one of the most brilliant personal branding experts on the planet, and he has rebranded himself over and over, more successfully each time. So successful branding demands commitment. Commitment to continual reinvention, striking chords with people to stir their emotions, and commitment to imagination. It is easy to be dismissive about such things. It is much harder to be successful. So this is a client, one of my absolute favorite success stories, actually. And what I want you to get from her story is that how we do this and what we do has a massive impact on your self-confidence. Not the facade that you've been taught to show the world, but actually how you show up. So she was a successful business owner, financially independent, and actually sold her business for millions of dollars. But through that process, she lost her sense of self and her self-confidence. And she started to feel like she didn't know who she was anymore, and it showed. She didn't know how to dress if she wasn't wearing a suit, and actually the first time I met this woman, she blew me away. She bought one of my most expensive programs and packages, and I'm not kidding you guys, this is actually a personal feeling of mine. I always tell this story, I feel a little bad for adding this in, but I didn't even notice her. She was in the back of the room, kind of body language hunched in on herself, and I dismissed her as someone who probably wasn't interested in what I was selling and definitely didn't have the money to buy. Like, that was how much self-confidence she had lost. But I quickly reversed that, of course. We worked together. She didn't feel valued by those around her, but I showed her how to boost her self-confidence through all of my scientific processes, through what I do. And even though she wasn't using it to sell products and services, what she did is embrace the change in her life by changing how she physically presented herself and created an entire new, very, very happy and successful retirement for herself, doing everything she wanted to do, where people took her seriously when she walked into a room, and she's just loving her life. So what I want you to understand is what this can do for you in every single audience that you interact with. It is not just for selling. It is for making sure that you enjoy your life and people enjoy being around you. When you're authentic in who you are, it makes everything else easier. The other thing, as I just illustrated, is that if you are not branding yourself intentionally and specifically, you can be sure others do it for you. I guarantee you this woman does not look at herself as being the wallflower in the back of the room, and never really did. But because she had let her self-confidence lapse and she didn't really know what she was presenting and how she was showing up, it gave me the opportunity, without even intentionally knowing that I was doing it, to assume that she was not someone worth my time. You don't want people to do that to you. You want to take control of that impression, you want to know how they're interacting with you, and you want to make sure that you're presenting your best self when you show up in a room. So our programs actually are built around this diagram, and what we do within this is help you uncover and amplify your authenticity, because people buy who they see. So we start with what is deep inside you, your inner desires, what makes you you, what is basically the design of your being. And then within that, we use everything that you are, who you are at your deepest levels, to help build out your physical and emotional and verbal presentation of self. And then at the very outside are some of these levels of rapport that I was talking about. So your body language, how you are backing up what you say, and then also, of course, your brand documents, how you are showing up on your resume, on your website, everything that you use to support your business. So the myth, what most people do when they start trying to build a personal brand, and I was no different the first literally dozen times that I tried to do this, is you look at someone who you consider successful and you try and create a persona for yourself based on who they are, because you assume that if they're successful, you can be successful if you just copy them. This is just so untrue, it's not even funny. As a matter of fact, really the only way to fail at building a personal brand is to do this. You can't show off who you are authentically if you're trying to be someone else. So the reality, not the myth, is that people buy who, not what they see. And if who you are is acting, they're going to pick up on that. And they might not know it very specifically, but there's going to be a part of their brain that is consistently trying to figure out who the real you is. And then they're not even necessarily listening to you. And worse, what is most likely to happen is that they will create a feeling of mistrust because they're not quite sure which part of you is the real you. And then rather than experiencing you, they're continually trying to figure this out. You've lost the sale. So if you want to succeed, the number one rule is that your products, your services, your qualifications are second to your story. And your story is what your personal brand is built around. So this is another format that we use to look at levels of rapport and also what you are selling, who you are. So your brand voice, your skills, your appearance, your products all have to mesh with and amplify your personal story. And within that, we teach you how to access your confidence, your purpose or your mission, your intention, and most of all, your authenticity. Here's another client. This is a really good example of someone who presented herself very, very well, but didn't have the other levels of personal branding to back it up. So she wanted to be an editorial stylist. She was a model. She was really passionate about her work, but she was not really booking many paid jobs because she had no idea of how to communicate her value, why she was worth money for what she did. And absolutely she is. She just had no idea how to move forward with building her brand, and instead of trying to figure out how to market herself or brand herself differently, she just kept working unpaid jobs, hoping someone would notice her. Something else I love to tell you guys is hope is not a strategy, okay? You can't just keep throwing money or working harder, hoping that you're going to get a break. I guarantee you it's not going to happen. So she did my program, and we helped get all of the other levels of personal branding up to speed with how she was presenting herself. And she ended up not only working some pretty incredible high-end editorial styling jobs. She has been published in Vogue and international magazines, but she is also the head stylist for Daily Blast Live, which is an incredible website that publishes news blasts. I believe it's 5 times a day, and she is just loving it. So it's not just how you look, it's how you show up, what your story is, and how you communicate that, whether or not people want to engage with you and buy from you. So my goal with this training today is to show you 3 truths. The first one is probably not going to surprise you because I've just drilled it in. The biggest mistake you can make is to lack authenticity in your brand. The fastest way to achieve your financial goals, or any other goals in your life for that matter, is to focus on building your true inner confidence and sharing your purpose. Every student I have ever worked with gets very passionate when you ask them to talk about why they're doing what they're doing. But it's something we almost never see them do unless they've been taught to do it, because what we are told as a society is that you have to qualify yourself. Tell them about your skill set or your products or your whatever. Like, how many of you walk into a networking event and say that you do, whatever it is that you do, and that it allows you to sell X, Y, and Z. And then I guarantee you, whether you're talking about yourself or the person standing across from you, you start to glaze over a little bit. But if you start sharing your purpose and your mission in networking events, guess what? You're going to have an engaged audience. They're going to actually want to hear more about what you sell after they hear about why you're so passionate about it, and it completely changes the conversation. The last one, shifting your focus to how and why you present yourself, will take you from trying to sell to just connecting with people. Makes it a much, much easier conversation, and you don't have to feel like you have to sell yourself in ways that are uncomfortable ever again. At the center of your being, you already have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you stand for. Every one of us has a mission. We're just going to help you go out there and achieve it. So I'm going to tell you my story. I launched my first independent line at 22. And I had okay sales, very little industry attention, and as I already told you, I ended up closing that business because the market was tough, and I had no way to differentiate myself. So I went into corporate design and marketing for 10 years, and it was fascinating to me to learn more about the science of why people buy, loving the work, but I really hated the atmosphere. It was so shallow. So, assuming that I knew everything I needed to know, I went 10 years later and launched my second independent line, and I had the same result. Guess what was the commonality 10 years later? I was talking about my products. So, of course, I was more stubborn at 32 than I was at 22. I said, I am doing this, but I was weeks away from bankruptcy, and I just had no idea how to force some money into this business with very, very little time. So I started to analyze, I backed up and stopped talking about my product, and I looked at what made it really special when I connected with the customer. What made me different, both to myself and also to my customers, than anyone else in my business. And what I came up with is that I really enjoy helping people. I like helping them showcase their inner self and their purpose. I started working on that, both through my design work and also starting to teach people how to do it. And it changed my finances and my life overnight. I didn't have any more money to put into the business. I wasn't advertising, but my market started reacting to me, and they started buying. Even more impressive to myself, just to prove that I could do this from a true product sales standpoint, I went ahead a year later, I launched my third independent line, and I spent zero money on my first month's marketing and advertising, and I made over $10,000. Little bit of a shift there, right? It's not that the third time was the charm. It's that I told my story, I connected with my audience, I made them feel something. And then I offered them the sale of my product where they could take home that feeling and that experience. They experienced who I am and what I represent, and they wanted more of it. today, what I get to do is even more impressive than just bring in some real profit. It's that I have the successful business of my dreams. I get to design and teach something that no one else really puts out there, and I don't have to deal with the drama of the corporate business that I was in. I don't have to deal with the drama of wondering where my next sale is coming from. It feels incredible. What I want you to get out of this is that in the space of only a few months, I was able to make a truly incredible and unprecedented change in my life. I started seeing real business growth, but even more important than that, I began to enjoy every moment of my business and my life, even the hard ones. When you start to understand your purpose and your mission and your inner authenticity, it shows to your customers and to yourself, and it helps you understand what is right to do, what is not right to do, and to just make decisions based on that. So the reason I am sitting here teaching this class to you guys is that I am teaching what actually works for me. These are processes and tactics that no other coach or mentor is going to give you, because they all say you need a personal brand, but they haven't really taken the step back to do the work to figure out what the process is of building it. People work with me because I am who I say I am, and I get to help you go through something that I have personally experienced in a way that maybe you are starting to experience, but you haven't reverse engineered. This is something, having worked with a lot of coaches and business mentors, I believe fully in. A good mentor needs to have failed. They need to have experienced what it feels like not to be able to get where they wanted to get. And then they need to have succeeded. If you haven't done both of those things, you cannot reverse engineer the process in a way that makes it valuable to your clients. So the first activity that I'm going to have you guys do is called, What is my brand voice? So I ask my students to sit down, and I want you to start giving some adjectives that describe how you show up and also who you are spiritually and emotionally. So adjectives are describing words. For myself, things that I use are professional, stylish, confident, approachable. So I want you to come up with 3 for each, both physically and then also spiritually or emotionally. And then the next part of this is that I want you to boil down all of this into just 2 or 3 adjectives that most closely align with your purpose and your mission. Now, as you build out your personal brand, you start amplifying it into the world, you will use these adjectives to make sure that everything you put out there is staying true to who you are. This is in the handout, so you can go back and do this later, or pause this and just quickly go ahead and work through this so you can start putting a brand voice to your purpose and your mission. Now, there are 3 reasons why most people's brand is not authentic to them. The first is fear. Fear of judgment, fear of hardship, fear of pain, fear that putting yourself out there is going to mean that you're going to be rejected. This is very common, but I guarantee you, if you do it in a way that is truly authentic to you, you are not going to be rejected. False confidence is another one that is really, really common. So you are spending your energy in acting like you're successful or in acting like you have confidence, and not in actually executing anything that's going to help you move your life and your business forward. And then, of course, the hardest one is lack of focus. So many people suffer from bright, shiny object syndrome, or you just aren't quite able to articulate who you are and what you want. Our programs are actually designed around these 3 blocks, and we help you bust through every single one of them. The idea is that the better we feel in our skin, the more we achieve. Your personal brand not only influences your own thought processes, but it also changes the way that you interpret the objects, people, and places around you. So that means not only are you giving your audience a chance to experience you, but you are changing your experience into one where you feel far more confident, far more positive about who you are and what you do than when you're just trying to sell. So to capture your audience, You need a holistic presentation of self that is authentic, consistent, and intentional. To tell your story, you need far more than just a canned sales pitch. There is actually a triad of personal branding. At the top is your physical presentation. So how you show up determines how people have that immediate reaction to you. Underneath that, of course, is your rapport and demeanor. Very last is what you say. But they all need to be consistent and they need to be linked, or you create a little bit of that system of mistrust in whoever is listening to you. Your audience does decide within the first 3 to 5 seconds whether they will buy from you or not. And remember, they can still decide, even if they want to buy from you, that they are not trusting of you and they will back away. So you want to make sure everything supports your personal brand. This is actually my partner, Laura. She has an undergraduate degree in psychology, concentrating in neuroscience. So a lot of this science of confidence, things that are proven to give you power over your own confidence levels, come directly from her research. But she felt very stifled by the day-to-day grind and the lack of creative outlet that she had in her psychology career. So she went back and got a design degree. I wanted to sell some just beautiful products and ended up feeling exploited and underutilized there by the corporate design world. So what she did is backed up, looked at her purpose and her mission, and then ended up creating a niche using style and fashion as a tool to help people be seen. So she can affect your confidence and also affect your audience through the physical presentation of self. She uses style as a tool to express and reinforce her intentions, both to herself and to others. So we call clothing sartorial armor. She uses it as a beautiful exoskeleton to tell the world who she is without speaking. There are 6 elements of a memorable brand. The first is to be sticky. Now this means that you need to have something that actually sticks in your audience's mind. And there are 2 ways to do that. First is to be unique, and the second is to be emotional. This goes back to the personal branding myth. You cannot base yourself off of someone else and expect to actually be sticky. You have to tell your own story, and you have to bring enough of your purpose and your mission through it to access not only your emotions, but also to have people emotionally react to you. One good way to do this is to be attentive to the details. It also helps back up who you are. When you give details about your personal brand and your personal story, people experience it and they believe you. Be saturated. So make sure that every point of interaction, online to offline to in-person, is saturated with the details of your personal brand. And then social proof, of course, are testimonials, articles, ways that you can share who you are with your audience by showing them who you are in ways that other people have interacted with you. Second activity is to start to use that brand voice that we're developing to deliver your intention and your purpose and your authentic message. Once you understand these elements, you will start to have the tools to begin building a brand story that will make your clients buy from you because they need the experience that you give them. So this is the framework of it, and this will evolve as you work through my processes and systems, but you want to start showcasing your uniqueness. What is emotional about your purpose and your mission? Why do you do it? Where you get a reaction out of yourself. And then some proof, like what have you done that actually pulls together what makes you unique and what is the emotion behind it, and showcases the best examples of how you do this. So one of the tools that I help my clients get for themselves through our personal branding process is an audio logo, which is far more than just an elevator pitch or a sales pitch. It's like a verbal brand statement. It should give your listener a short, impactful soundbite of your brand experience. It is absolutely not a sales pitch, so you should not try to sell anything when you use it. You are helping whoever you're talking to start to experience who you are. There's 3 elements of a sticky audio logo. You want to first explain your target market, and ideally, this is something that helps your audience put themselves in the shoes of whoever your ideal target market is. Second is that you explain what problem or white space you are solving. And then last, you tell them how you're solving it. What are your results? Looks something like this. Typically, my clients are your target market who have the challenge of the problem. I help them get results. When someone asks you what you do, you could go with the standard, I'm a real estate agent, or I used to say, well, I'm a designer, or I'm a personal brand expert. What happens when you put a label on yourself is not only can you halt the conversation because they may or may not have anything to say to that, but you can watch your audience make an assumption about you based on their prior experience or lack of experience with whatever it is you just labeled yourself as. Or you could give them a good audio logo which tells them a story that helps them connect with you and what you do on your level. So I used to say, I'm a designer. Now what I say, my audio logo, is I work with business owners and brands to teach them how to effectively tell their story. My programs and apparel lines help them stand out for the right reasons, gain confidence, and level up their impact and their sales. So if you are someone that actually might be interested in working with me, you've probably put yourself in the shoes of those business owners and brands, and you're interested in hearing more. Big difference between just saying, oh, I'm a personal brand expert, or I'm a designer. So this is all leading up to helping you really build your inner confidence. And there are 4 factors of confidence. The first, and one of the most interesting ones, is to use those 11 levels of rapport techniques that we teach you. It gives you power over your audience, and it also makes them more open to you. There's nothing more confidence building than that. Second is to create a brand presence. So you are interweaving your story into everything you do, and you're just talking about who you are. And it eliminates some of the overwhelm and the pressure to try and sell something. You're just helping them experience you. Second, Laura's favorite, is wearing sartorial armor. So this is literally using scientifically proven colors and shapes to not only create something that looks very good on you and gets a reaction from your audience, but it'll make you feel good. It boosts your confidence. And the last one is that you have to believe in your product and your services as well as your story. And they are all linked. You don't have to talk about your product necessarily, but you do need to make sure that you showcase who you are as you bring it to the world. It does create confidence where you're doing more than just trying to sell something. You're helping people have an experience that you know that they need. Another client. She was a fashion buyer, but she is casual to a fault. And she had all of the skills and the knowledge and even some of the rapport techniques, but she lacked confidence in her skills and her ability to be taken seriously in her job because of how inauthentic it felt to her to dress in super fashionable clothing. And she really needed to get some tools and some tricks to fit in at the level she wanted to attain in her career. She did our Boom Your Brand program and learned some of these confidence building tools and ended up taking everything she already had within herself and leveraged that into a 6-figure job offer to move across the country. And she is now a buyer in licensing for an international brand. Pretty cool. So what I want you to get from her is that you really can accomplish anything that you want when you feel comfortable and confident with who you are. Let's achieve your goals together. So this diagram actually has one more level. Your products and services are the very outer piece of your personal brand, and they are amplified by who you are. They are not what you build your brand around. You need to use your products and services as support for your story and your authentic self. You interweave your personal brand into everything you sell, and it stops being a sales conversation and it starts being a connection with your audience. What you're really trying to do is help your customers experience you, connect with you, and share your desires and your inspiration. It's very powerful. So this is the last activity. I want you to start to understand how what you sell relates to your personal story. Again, with most of my clients, what I do with them is have them start talking about why they're passionate about it in the first place. This is where your conversation should start with your audience. So I want you to sit down and I want you to talk, even if it's with yourself, about your purpose and your mission and what you are trying to solve by doing what you do. Those two things help to focus what your authentic message actually is. Notice that nowhere on this slide do I ask you to describe your products or services. I want you to talk about your mission, what you solve, and who you are authentically within that. Really what we're doing is showcasing your values, your purpose, your mission, your authenticity. You're using your marketing materials, your website, your social media, and all of your sales channels to communicate your story. Now, one step further. Obviously, if we're selling something, we need a pricing structure. It should be a part of your story. If you are pricing your products and services appropriately, it's backed up by who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. Here's an example of some brands that I've worked with. So everybody probably knows this little doodad. They were launching a very high-end special edition product at over 3 times the price of their normal offering. And they were really concerned that they were not going to be able to sell it. As a matter of fact, they started trying to back down and considered not even launching it. They worked with us, and we built out and publicized the story about the special materials, the limited edition of the product, everything that made it worth what it was truly worth, rather than just placing a sticker on it and hoping people got it. And do you guys want to guess what happened? It sold out in 8 days at full price. They could have done more than triple the volume probably and still sold out because the story was so interesting and impressive, and people just had to have the experience of this, high-end little doodad. This is a yoga wear brand that we have helped develop plus sizes for. And what I want you to get out of this is that between the regular sizes and the plus sizes, the cost was almost 30% higher, which is a huge amount of extra margin loss for that company to carry. But we, again, did our storytelling thing. We focused on telling the consumers about the company's commitment to inclusivity and why we were going to leave the plus size and the regular size at the same price and make it something that felt really good to the consumers. At the launch of the plus size product, the sales of both plus and regular sizes exceeded projections by over 25% because that story helped customers connect with the brand. And then they, of course, bought more. So personal experiences, not features or qualifications, are what sells. And your pricing structure should be a part of your brand story. We always talk about taking low dollar skills or features and turning them into high dollar storytelling. Stop selling. Help them experience you. If you help them experience what it means to be a part of your story, the price is actually the last thing that your customers will ask because they've already decided they want to own a part of that experience. This works. Now, remember I told you that it's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know that gets you results. There's actually one more step in there between knowing and taking actions and getting results. It's understanding the sequence to what you do. My favorite story to tell in this presentation is about the very first time as a kid that I ever made cookies. So I really, really wanted some chocolate chip cookies. I was probably 7 or 8, and my mom was busy. She did not have time for a cooking lesson, so she just gave me her mom's recipe card with the ingredients, but there weren't really any instructions or steps, and I thought I would just go ahead and tackle it. Now, if any of you bake, you understand that the sequence of how you put the ingredients together is actually hugely important. Not just because it affects the result, but because you can't really step backwards and redo once your eggs or your flour are in there. So in this cookie making process, I realized at one point that I could not very well go back and redo the steps I had miscalculated on. And I ended up with a chocolate Franken cookie thing. It had all the right ingredients in the right format and in the right quantities, but it did not turn out to be anything I or anyone in my family was really interested in eating. Building a brand and building a business is not all that dissimilar. You need to know the framework, you need to know the steps, and you need to know the process to what you are doing before you take action if you want the intended result. This is what we do in our Boom Your Brand system. We have built over 100 hours of coursework to give every single step you need to do in the right way to maximize your earning potential and feel incredibly confident in who you are and what you do. So I promised you I'd give you an option to see how we can work together if you wanted to take this further. And I'm going to tell you about our Boom Your Brand courses. And actually, our next one is launching May 1st. It's personal branding for profit. So this is everything that I've given you today. We first help you define your niche and focus your personal story, learn the science of building physical and emotional confidence, and then leverage your skills into high-value storytelling, all without spending a lot of money on advertising or marketing. And this capsule and this course is over 50 hours in and of itself, and you also get homework, you get training exercises, and you get a weekly call with me to touch base on everything you're working on and make sure that you don't have any blocks or questions. We also, following up on branding for profit, have a course we call Unsales Strategies. So this is the next level, how to relate your products and services to your personal brand. And we also go into how to price yourself right and tell that story. We help you use your packaging, merchandising, and sales materials to support your personal brand. This launches in May 1st, this launches on May 1st as well. But really it is the second part of what you need to do is a Boom Your Brand student. If you already have a personal brand that's really well built out, you might be ready for this, but I guarantee you, as someone who's been through all of the marketing and sales training that was available out there, most of you need to first build your personal brand in order to sell authentically without having that sales conversation. Last, but absolutely not least, is the third part of our online courses. It's how to be authentic online, specifically in social media. A lot of brands struggle with this. So how to tell your story in the digital world is similar, but there are some very, very specific tools and tactics we give you to make sure that your brand voice is communicated everywhere that your customers might see you. And then we also give you deep dives, how-tos and pro tips for Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. Now, if you buy these as a package, it's a $1,500 value, but we will give you a $200 discount for bundling them together up front. And actually, you guys, all that you need to get started on this to launch your Boom Your Brand journey on May 1st is a $199 deposit. Then after that, we set up 4 payments of $275. So by the time you are done with these courses, you will have made your money back. I guarantee it. As a matter of fact, that's something that I can talk about. We do guarantee results, or we will either work with you until you get them, or we will give you your money back. Now, one more juicy little offer. If you actually decide to pay in full, we'll give you another $300 off. So $997 is all that you need to get personal branding for profit, unsales strategies, and authentic social media strategies. This is a $1,500 value. If you decide to pay in full today, I'll make it even just a little bit sweeter because we're going to give you a couple of free gifts. I have live training courses that I do for personal branding for profit. So if you live in any of the cities where we host these, you are welcome to come to those for free. And I'm also going to give you today a Boom Your Digital Brand Guide. So if you go ahead and choose the option to pay in full, you get a lot of free goodies in addition. So, I hope you enjoyed learning all about personal branding and what you need to do to create success in your life. And go to styledbykate.com/boomyourbrand if you want to learn anything more about this, or otherwise hit me up on any of my social media channels and I would love to chat with you guys.